Well, this could be going, and it could be stalled. But if you guys can hear me and or see me, let me know, and I'll get started, even if I can't see myself. Okay, looks like I'm up. All right, I'm gonna mute myself. If you guys are there, say hey. If you're not, then I'm just gonna keep working and act like somebody can see me. So, is anybody actually there? I don't actually know. Anyway, I'm gonna start. So today I'm editing some stuff that I shot a couple weeks ago before, like at the beginning of when everything started going crazy with the lockdown. And, oh, the camera, it's right next to my feet, so I might bump that. There we go. But I thought I'd just run through the very simplest editing, just the way to get the footage from the camera into the computer, and then how to load it into, this is Adobe Premiere, and then how to get it going in Premiere. So this is, like I said, an Adobe program. You can see over here, I have two screens. I usually edit with two screens. You can't see all of this second screen up here, I don't think, but I can pull it down a little bit. This is just for color correction, if you can see my mouse there. And then down here you can see my preview. So I shot this video, like I said, a couple weeks ago with my sister. That's her right there. She has a cheese company. They do experiences with cheese, learning how to make cheese, the history of cheese. They talk about a lot of things. And she came over and we shot a few videos, just her talking about her business and talking about each of the individual experiences that they provide. So if I just open up, I'm on a Windows machine, by the way. So on my external storage, which you can store wherever you want, but mine is external, I have a server here, and then these are all folders for different clients and projects. And then her company is River Valley Cheese. We shot in March, so I named it March 2020. And then here's the footage folder. And here are the two cameras that we shot with. So this one is GH5, which is the little camera, as I call it, and then the Ursa, which is a bigger camera. And then there are the clips that we shot with each of those. And then I also rendered out proxies. I don't want to talk about that today because it's more work than most people will need. So kind of like on a cooking show, I already imported all the footage. So it's down here in my editor. When you bring yours up, it'll look different. I've arranged it to be how I like it to look. So here's those two folders with those two bins of footage, just like I was talking about earlier. So a shift select, if you have them organized by name, then they're going to be in the order that they were shot, which makes it easy to edit. Shift select all these, and then just drag them over to your timeline. And my timeline is at 1080p, but the footage I shot is at a higher resolution than 1080p. This one in particular is in UHD or 4K, depending on how you want to call it. And it's asking if I want to change the settings to match the footage or to keep my existing settings. And since I don't need more than 1080p for this edit, I'm going to leave it here, keep existing settings. And then if you go to the footage, you can see it's zoomed in more than it needs to be because it wasn't scaled. So I right click everything, or select everything, right click again, set to frame size, that right there, bam, good to go. And then here's the next bin of footage. This is from the other camera. It's going to live on a different track, but they're all going to be together like that. Again, it's the wrong size. Set to frame size, and now we're good. All right, and then as I zoom in, for the most part, I shot these. Oh, hey, I got a question. That Jake guy. How do I like Windows Premiere versus Mac Final Cut? I used Final Cut 7 back in the day, and then when they went to Final Cut 10, myself and a bunch of other people switched to Premiere, or just some other NLE, though for the most part it was Premiere. I think Premiere picked up where Final Cut 7 left off, and that was really nice. Final Cut 10 is not an NLE I've used yet. I don't really plan on it. From what I've seen, it's just a really different way of editing, and I'm pretty used to this. Windows versus Mac. I started editing on a Mac. I really like Macs. I have a Windows machine now because it was a lot cheaper. Like, especially when I bought this about a year and a half ago, it was maybe a quarter of the price of, say, an iMac Pro. The Mac Pro wasn't available yet, and I'm not in a position to be paying for that either. So Windows is a little bit less stable. It's a little bit less pretty to look at, but at the end of the day, it had the power that I needed to do the job that I do, and that was the priority for me at the time, and I haven't regretted the decision yet, but maybe someday I'll go back to Mac. I have a Mac laptop. I like it a lot for just using everyday stuff. I still definitely prefer the Mac, but this is my workstation, so aesthetics are less important. All right, so back to the clips. So for syncing these, right? So right now, they are not in sync. They represent different points in linear time from when the cameras were recording. And in order to make the edit work, we're gonna have to sync those up. But first, you can see they don't all match up perfectly, and that's because we were chatting, we were talking about different things. Some of the things she said while we were filming were interesting, but I didn't have the chance to turn on both cameras to get it, so I just hit record on the one camera that was next to me, and maybe we'll edit those for social, not really sure yet. But that said, it doesn't all match up, which is fine, because, so this is, oh here. So this is my select tool. You can use it to select things. Some people use keyboard commands. I happen, here, I'll hold it up. This is a gaming mouse, actually. Let's see if you can see that. That's good. It has these, I'm not going to focus on that because I'll lose my focus, but those are 12 buttons. I hold it like this, so those are right underneath my thumb. And then this mouse button up here offers a click this way, and then a click this way, and then down. And I've mapped this to different commands that I use a lot, so I don't have to go even to the keyboard. I can do it just with my fingers. It's really great. This is a Razer Naga mouse, if you care. It's on Amazon. Good luck ordering anything from Amazon these days, but hopefully you get lucky. All right, so this is obviously because these two clips are the same length, and I made sure to stop and record my cameras at the same time. These cameras go together, or these clips go together, these clips go together, these clips go together. This one does not match. So hit the T, at least on my keyboard with my shortcuts, I made them my own. The letter T is the select forward tool, so I use it to select everything ahead, and I move it all forward, and then I'm going to do it again right here and move it all forward. So now this clip that doesn't have a B-cam is shorthand for the second camera. It's just the one camera. I'm going to leave that there, and then I'm going to select all these. Oh, I'm going to go here. So this little selector, which may be almost too small for you to see, it says you can select audio and video tracks together, or if I deselect it and then I select autosave, now I select audio video tracks separately. Those are useful for different stages of editing. So I'm going to slide all that forward, and now you can see my clips match up more or less where they need to, and then they get out of sync over here because we did another off record. I still don't know if I'm live. I'm going to go check because that would be embarrassing. Okay, looks like I'm good. All right. So I'm going to continue this, just separating them out so there's a little space. All right, here's that one that doesn't match up again. I'm going to take these three, slide them back. If I had snap on, which for me is the letter N, now when I'm moving back and forward, they jump to certain points. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's annoying. I turn it off and on constantly. So don't think if you're setting up your own system that you need to have it on or off all the time. So many of these options are useful sometimes and not other times. Okay, so this is our first clip. This is the first thing we shot on the day we were shooting. And you can see, if I'll make these really big so it's a little bit easier to see visually. How's that? Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so this is the waveform. This is a visual representation of the levels of audio on the stream. And you can see here, we have a pattern that matches this pattern, kind of. Different cameras. This one had the microphone that is on her directly into it. This camera is just recording the room. But the one thing that is very important is this spike right here. So you can see that. That's a clap, just a physical clap with my hands. I didn't have a clapboard that day. Don't usually need one because that's not the kind of shooting I'm doing. And so you see, I just physically, manually grabbed this lower clip with the video attached and moved it so this spike and that spike line up actually quite perfectly. So I'm looking at a frame. This is one frame, this is another frame, and I can use the arrow keys to jump through them, and the spikes match up. And you can see the pattern of the audio also now matches up pretty good too. So I can say with a high level of confidence, these clips are synced. They are good to go. So jumping on to the next one, I'll do this a different method. Now you can still see the two spikes. I did two claps here because I wasn't satisfied with the first one, but you can see there's a spike, there is a spike, and then those two same spikes here and back here. Now I'm zooming in and out a lot. Also, these are some of the commands I've mapped to my mouse, so I don't necessarily know what they are on the keyboard. For me, they're the plus minus keys, and I do that a lot. Hey, Margot. All right, so select both of these clips, right click, and then go here to synchronize. Now this can synchronize by timecode or can synchronize by audio. I'm going to select, okay, I'm going to go down to audio, select audio because I don't have timecode on these. I'm not going to be using timecode to synchronize. Select OK, and it's going to take a minute to read the audio and figure out where it sees the match points. So it finished, it figured it out, and it looks pretty good. So I often check where my synchronized points are. Sometimes it'll be off or not perfect by a frame. Sometimes the frames don't match up perfectly like this one does. So you can see the space between this spike and this spike is a little bit less if I skip this back by a frame. So now those are in sync. And again, they're not exactly down to the frame, probably to the mic, to less than a frame, they're not synced, but when you're watching, you never know the difference. All right, so I could speed through all these. Maybe I should. Really doesn't take that long. If I'm moving through these too quickly, if anybody is watching, still can't tell because I don't have that window open because you would see it right here on the screen. Ask questions in the comments, happy to answer them. I'm kind of flying blind here in terms of who's out there. Could just be talking to myself. The longer the clip, the longer it will take to synchronize. This one is taking a little bit longer. I don't exactly know how it uses technology to sync. I assume it's something with a digital version of what I'm doing visually, which is looking at the clips. Okay, so I've done a little more than half of the clips. I'm okay with that for now. I'm just going to select these and move them off to the side. I have actually, if I go down here, these are my sequences. You can have as many sequences as you want. I have a sync sequence here, and this is all those same clips, already synchronized. You can see between here and here, there is just one audio track, so I deleted the audio track from the camera that I didn't need the audio from. I was recording audio into one camera, just her microphone, didn't have anything else. So in here, I've got all that done. And then I also trimmed it up so you can see this little arrow here. It's pretty hard to see probably from the stream view, but there is a tiny little arrow right there at the very top, and that designates the end of the recording. And so usually I trim off just the stuff that I don't need. So you can see here I trimmed it off on this end, made those frames line up, and then I didn't bother doing it here in the end, but that's fine. So these are all my clips, and then from here I did some color correction. So these are color corrected already. So this is the A cam, it's looking straight on at her. You can see it looks like a good camera view, I think. And then this is the B camera. So the B camera, I tend to have it a little bit more zoomed in, and depending on my setup, a little bit shallower depth of field, though not always. Shallower depth of field means the stuff behind is more blurry. And in front too, though I usually try not to keep the stuff in front of my subject. But you can see here, so with these tiles in the background, they're blurry. You can still kind of see the shapes, but they're blurry. And this one, you can see they're still blurry, but they're less blurry. And maybe you can't see that because it's pretty small on your screen. Let me make it bigger. All right, maybe that's a little bit easier to see. Maybe not. All right. But back to this sequence, you'll see now my, I'll go up here. So this camera, this isn't the baked in color. The color that it came with looks more like, I'll turn it off. I'm just gonna adjust my sizes a little bit so I can work to, okay. So this camera shot in RAW, which is the data coming off the camera sensor being recorded to the card without color information interpreted. So it's still gathering the image, but it's not necessarily picking the colors that it thinks are there. It lets you pick those afterward. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. Don't spend too much time fretting about it. It's not super important, just to know it is RAW. So with RAW, you got to develop it, so to speak. So you got to pick what your color temperature is, which is like the warmer or the cooler. If you've done any editing on, even for like Instagram and Facebook, you'll see that. Your ISO, so how sensitive it is, that is not baked in like it is with standard cameras. It's pretty nice. I like it a lot. But when it comes out of the camera, it looks pretty ugly. So let's see if I can, does that do it? No, I'm not used to removing, oh, does that do it? No, that doesn't do it. I'm not used to removing the color information. There we go. Okay, so this is what it looked like coming out of the camera. It's flat, fewer colors, it just doesn't, like you wouldn't ever want to put the video that looks like this out in the world because it doesn't look finished. But you can still see all the information is there. So her blue shirt looks kind of greenish right now, but it's still in that color range. You can still tell that's a green plant and, you know, a stainless fridge in the background. So everything is there, it just doesn't look good. So you got to tell it what those looks are. And so in doing so, I picked my ISO, the sensor sensitivity, my white balance, which is, it comes in a number of Kelvin in the thousands. It's kind of confusing, but just, if I'm not going to talk about color correction that much today because it's not, if you're using a regular camera, it's going to be a minor adjustment and not like picking it from the world of options. So if I undo that, so this is again the color that I ended up with that I thought looked good. Some of the things to focus on when you're picking color are skin tones. Some cameras like the GH5, which is the other camera I shot with, will come out kind of pinkish, especially on people with pale skin, kind of pushing that magenta. So this I think looks pretty good. And then again, once I picked that, then I went to the GH5, the second camera, and this is the color that came out of the GH5 before correction. You can see this looks a little bit greener, whereas this looks pretty overexposed. This looks kind of underexposed. It is, again, just pretty awful. So in this sequence, you can see, if I zoom in here. So that is the color corrected image for the GH5. So this is the Ursa, a Blackmagic camera, and then GH5. And they're still a little different. I could tweak them, but for this stage of editing, I am happy with how this looks. I can tweak it later. It is not that hard. Where for the Blackmagic, I got to go in and do that raw development. For the GH5, this color for the most part is baked in, so I don't pick white balance as much. I don't pick my ISO. I go into this Lumetri color panel, and then you can see here I have, so this is warm cool, the temperature selector, and then this is called tint, and it goes green, magenta, pick that. And then you have other things like contrast, saturation. Saturation is how much color is being pushed. And then a tool that I use a lot is called Curves, especially for exposure. Curves is nice because it allows you to adjust exposure at certain spots within the spectrum. So if you go over here, these, they're called scopes. Can you see those? You can see them for the most part here. I'll pan up a little bit. There. So each of these tell you a different picture, give you a different picture of what is going on the color space over here. So if I take this curve, I'll make that bigger. How's that? That's good. All right, if I take this curve and I lift it up, it's going to increase the exposure, but it's going to disproportionately increase the exposure in the middle of the spectrum. So over here, this is dark, this is white, and this is the middle. Or is that right? No. Okay, white is near the top, and then dark is near the bottom on this one. And then this is horizontal match to this. Okay. So by doing so, it increases the exposure, the amount of brightness in the image in the middle more than on the edge. So this is the middle. This is the brightest part of the image, and this part of the curve represents the brightness part, and then this is here the darker part. So I'll go ahead and undo that, Control Z, bring it back to what I wanted. And then so if I like lift up the darkest part here and lift that up, you can see on here, this bottom part is going up as I lift that bottom part of the curve. And then on the image over here, I'll make that bigger. It kind of makes it look almost washed out, like the darks aren't really dark anymore, they're more like gray. So if you keep going, things start looking pretty weird, but you can see kind of the effect of the bottom of the curve there. And then likewise at the top, this controls the brightest parts of the image. So if I grab it from the very top and drag it down, you can see, especially here in the window, how it dims it down to where it doesn't even look natural anymore. It just looks weird, and you can make that inverted too. So for cameras like the GH5 that don't record in RAW, if you're blown out like you are here in the window, I knew it was going to be blown out, I'm okay with it. You can't bring that back. You don't get, you can't pull this down to make that look not white or to see more detail in what was behind it. It's just gone. And that's one of the things you got to know about working with like a DSLR, shooting in any kind of compressed codec, and then you go to RAW. Now in the RAW image, I have some more options. It doesn't bring everything back, but you can bring some of that back from those blown out areas like in the window there. All right, so color correction. So these two are matched. Again, not perfectly. I don't know if you can tell on the stream that they're not perfect. I can tell with my eyes on the screen that they're not perfect. This isn't the nicest screen. People who do this for a living just picking color on like movies and stuff, they have screens that cost many thousands of dollars, into the tens of thousands, because they want like perfectly accurate color. I don't need that because most of what people are watching that I make is on YouTube and Facebook. So yeah, moving on. So from here, this is my sync sequence. So I've jumped from here, where they're not timed up, to timing them up so that each layer here and here exist in the same, or they're playing from the same moment of time or close to it. And then color correcting so that they both look good together, so that this and this look good. This thing I'm doing here, by the way, that's enable, which if you're looking if you right click, it's up here, enable. You can't really see that, but trust me, it's there. And that just tells the computer or the NLE, hey, this is a clip that I want to pull data from. I want to see what's going on here or not. For timeline management, especially on a slower system, maybe with a slower hard drive or your computer itself isn't as powerful, enabling and disabling clips is a key to making sure your system runs as efficiently and smoothly as possible. So another one of those things, if you can, get used to it, use it a lot, it's your friend. All right, so from here, I synced everything up, trimmed it, got rid of my bad audio and color corrected so things look pretty well matched. I would call this vanilla, where it's okay for now and I can tweak it later, and that's fine. It's easy to change the color once you're done. In the raw clips, you just go over here, nope, over here, there it is, and you can just select and copy and paste that or save that settings, and then you can come back to it later. In Lumetri, it's as simple as selecting that effect in the effect controls panel. Again, hard to see because I'm working with two screens here, but it says effect controls. It's one of the Windows options here that you can create and use. It has started hailing outside, so if you hear any weird sound, that's why. I got a wind advisory notification on my phone just a few minutes ago, so this might be part of that. All right, so moving on to the next stage. Now you guys can't hear the audio here because I'm running audio through my headphones and not through my microphone. But just so you know, she's talking about her company up here, and then we kind of honed down like kind of a mission statement presentation, not just like for her business, but like what a mission statement could be like. Wow, it's really, really coming down out there. Okay. And then she talks about the 4 ingredients for cheese. She talks about different kinds of cheese that she makes in her classes. And so down here, each of those individual kind of topics that we touch on get their own sequence. And there are so many ways to do this. You can, and there are so many ways to do anything in this program. You can go down here. It's the new item button. It looks like a little piece of paper with a corner folded over. I don't know why that means new anything, but let's just go with it. And then sequence. So you can make a new sequence like that. I'm not going to go through it. Or you can, which I like to do, select the content that you want to be in its own video, right click, make subsequence. So I'm going to go and do that. And so this stuff stays exactly where it was, but then down here in your project bin, you see a new sequence popped up, and it just says sync sub 01. So it just means it was from the sync sequence, subsequence, sub number 1. So it says it's the first that it can detect subsequence from that sequence that I've created. I made other subsequences because I did them all already, but I've changed those names to be the names of what those topics are, which makes for easy organization. And I'm just looking at this one now. So, she's just talking about random stuff right here. We'll jump forward. Okay. Okay, so she's talking about why she got involved in cheese and what led her to choosing this path for her career. And I'll just start editing it down and turning it into something, but probably not from this sequence because I've already got a sequence here. So I'll just rename it for you guys. So I did a right click down here in the project bin on that very same sequence that we created, and you know what, rename might not be there. I might just have to select it again. Okay, cool. Why she got into cheese. All right, and there it is. Change the name of our sequence over here to match the name of the sequence over here. Again, good organization, just keeps things easy. I'm going to go here to this sequence that I created earlier called Gouda, which is a kind of cheese. And again, apologies for not being able to hear what she is saying here. You're just going to have to trust me that... camera. Okay, so this just picks up the very sequence. So this is the very beginning of the sequence. I'm clapping. She's just kind of verbally getting into what she's saying. Now you can get false starts. You can get people talking on these things. Those are all things you can trim out. Like if I go back to this sync sequence, you can see in the waveform, if I make it bigger, the waveform is a word for the pattern of sound that you see. So you can see here it gets quiet, that means we're either talking about something else, but whatever it is, very likely not relevant to the video. So an easy way when you're trimming video, like boiling it down to just the stuff that you really need, you can just trim it out. So back here in Gouda, that's what that is at the beginning. She might have had a false start here. She's joking about so just from listening to her talk, I can tell that this isn't stuff that that we need to have in the video. Select it and then delete it. Now, to see if the edit plays well when it's all together, I can select that gap and then hit delete, which for me is another key that I mapped on my mouse, and bump them together. And then it's a jump cut, right? You can tell that when it's playing through. I'll make this bigger so you can see. I'm also cutting some of that gap in there, just a few frames, probably looks like 5-6 frames, which each frame matters. And if you want to get really good at editing, you got to make sure that like it's down to the frame, a good thing, like it's a good edit, right? Messy edits, I see them a lot. They bother me, especially in web videos, marketing stuff. But if you want to be a good editor, pay attention to your frames. All right. All right, so there's a jump. You can tell she moves. Not a pretty edit if you were to just leave it like that, but there are options. So because I shoot in 4K, and this is why I like 4K and any resolution higher than 1080p, is you can, so back a step so nobody gets lost if anybody's even out there. When I select these, you can see the video and the audio are selected together. The audio on this one is deleted, so it just goes in its own. But if I'm editing just the video tracks, I don't want these to go together. So deselect that right there. And then now I can just select the video tracks. And now I'm going to hit enable again. Now this top track is not enabled. If I make it bigger, you can see. It has, you can tell because it's a darker color, it just looks a little different. And this bottom track is enabled. Now if I hit that enable key that I have a shortcut for, bam, now all of a sudden it disables the enabled track and it enables the disabled track. Makes editing really easy. So now when you go through that jump cut, you can see, you can't visually tell that there's a jump cut as easily. So that just makes for a nicer edit if you're cutting stuff out. And with 2 cameras, shooting in 4K, you have a lot of options for cutting all kinds of things. So another tool would be to digitally zoom in over a jump cut. So let's go over here. So these are the effect controls. And in the effect controls, there is the motion kind of set of options that you have. So there are two that are relevant for what we're talking about right now. One of them is position. So you can change the position of the video track in the frame. You can even go off, right? That's up, down. This is left, right. And then scale is this other one. So if I scale it up, you can zoom way, way, way in. If I zoom it out, you can go all the way to 0 and it's gone. But for this, I don't need to do either of those. I just want it. So right now my scale is at 50, which on this bigger camera is actually punched in a little bit because this shoots out higher than 4K. But I'm gonna say, let's go to 65% scale. So this is not 100%. At 100%, you're showing pixel for pixel. So every pixel that was shot in the camera is represented by 1 pixel on the screen. If you go higher than 100%, now you're upscaling your video, and you're technically losing definition. It's debatable whether anybody can actually tell, but I try not to go over 100. And for this, I'm just going to go to 65. So her head is cut off, so I'm going to use this position slider, slide her right down so that her head fits in. This tool here shows me where the center points are. These markers, I can make that bigger. These markers on the side, top and bottom, show where the center point is. I can tell her head is not in the center, and I kind of want it to be in the center for this A camera. For the B camera, it's a little different. All right, so you can see, she's not quite centered here either. There we go. So again, a better edit. You do a jump cut, you punch in, take advantage of those extra pixels that you recorded to cover your edits and make them look not so awful by just doing a straight jump cut. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, unless it's a style that you're trying to go for, would I recommend shooting or editing with a jump cut. All right. So I kind of liked the camera switch edit better. And while I'm here, I can see that my colors have switched a little bit. I don't know which camera settings changed from earlier on, but that's okay. That's easy to fix. But maybe for the second camera, I don't want it at 50%, which is, if I go any less than 50, say 45, you can see I get a black border. So let's go back to, let's say 60, punching in a little bit on this one. And now for this B camera, because she is not looking at the camera like she is with this camera, right? She's looking straight on there. Here she's looking off to the side. Stylistically, it makes sense, and this is a known tool. This isn't something I made up, where you just shift them to the left a little bit or to the direction away from where they're looking. So their eyes and the direction they're looking across the screen, right? So if I flipped her, let's just change my scale. That doesn't look great. Here. Nope, not that one. No, that doesn't work. I think I have to flip it horizontally. Anyway, just take my word for it. When we're looking across the frame. So with the direction she is looking, there is more space between her and the edge of the frame in that direction, right? So, and like I've seen it done stylistically for reasons. So you wouldn't want it like this because she's looking near the near edge of the frame. You would want it so she's looking at the far edge of the frame. I hope that makes sense. I don't feel like I'm explaining it super well, but we can just go with it. Okay. So put her over here, just a little bit left to center it so that she's looking across the frame. And here's our edit. All right. That difference in color is kind of bothering me. Looks like it needs a little bit more blue. You can see I'm just really tweaking it just a little bit. It doesn't take a lot to change the whole look of the video. Okay. Don't know how she got shifted down like that. That's okay. Just put it back. Okay. Okay, so she's talking about the 4 ingredients here. Or at least at this part. Oh, is she like moving in the... Yeah, confusing. This happens sometimes. Yeah, she wasn't standing totally up, and now she is. So that's why she changes in the frame. The camera doesn't move. All right, so, oh, that's why. We were in Gouda. I switched my sequence. That makes so much more sense. Okay. All right, so she's talking about why she likes Gouda. All right, so before I get too much farther into this, I want to do this. So the audio tracks. I don't record audio at the full volume that the camera will record, because if for any reason you go louder than full volume, then it clips, which means it doesn't capture all the data that is there from the audio. I think that makes sense. Anyway, so I record a little bit low so that there is little or no chance of that audio clipping, meaning she will have a hard time getting too loud for the camera to record it. But that means it's also not as loud as it needs to be for the edit. So if I select my audio track, right click, there's a selection here in Premiere called Audio Gain. Click that. And now it's going to analyze and tell me what the loudest part of the sequence, these clips that I've selected are. And they do it in decibels, and they do it in negative decibels. So in video, the loudest you can go is 0 decibels, which if you do any live audio production, you know that doesn't really make sense because 0 decibels is no noise. But in video and in digital, 0 decibels means it's like as loud as you can go. It's really backwards. But my peak amplitude here, so my peak decibel level is 5.8, 5.8 decibels below the loudest point it can get. Now I don't need to go all the way up to 0 decibels where the loudest point in the sequence matches the loudest point it can handle, because I may be laying music in here, I may be doing things later on. So I'm just going to set my gain to 5, which gives me a little bit of headroom. Select OK. And now it automatically adjusts any of the tracks I've selected by 5 decibels. Now you can also see, if I make this bigger, back to Gouda, I'm just going to close these up. Cool. If I make these bigger, you can see the loudest points in the waveform. It's kind of loud right here at the beginning. There's a big spike right here, you can see. There's another spike here toward the end, and then a little one here at the back. So this is very likely the loudest part of the video right here. Okay, and she's just saying, I know Gouda is my favorite cheese. She's excited, she's energetic, but she's doing it in a conversation with me. She's not talking about it in the context of the video. So if I just play it up, I can figure out where that edit point is where she stops talking for the video. Okay, she's rambling, so I'm going to cut it there, where I know this is not stuff. Okay, now she's back into video mode. So she's talking about a good Gouda, which is a funny thing to say. So I'm going to go and edit that junk. Now there is probably some edit point over here too, where some of the things she's saying are not relevant to the video, but I don't need to pick that right now, because I'm just pulling out the simplest parts. She says you never need to go to Costco again. There's a gap. And then she's just kind of rambling. So, all right. Okay, and then this is just junk at the end. Delete that. All right, so now that I've deleted perhaps the loudest part of the video, I'm going to do my audio gain again. I wouldn't necessarily do this if I wasn't editing a little tutorial, but I'm doing it just to show that things change, and that's why things might change. So now my peak amplitude is negative 6.5. So that part that I deleted did in fact change where the loudest point of the video is, and now the loudest point is almost a decibel less loud than it was. So I'm going to put my gain to 6 decibels, which would make my peak amplitude negative 5 decibels, which again is fine to work with. Maybe you saw them bump up a little bit there. And this would be, jump cut here. Now I have a jump cut here. If you can see by the thumbnail that pops up. So if I were to do the very simplest edit without paying attention to anything that she's saying, I could finish it up with this. And then that would be, this would be a very, very simple edit with, 4 edits, 4 clips. I would never, this isn't a finished edit by any means, but this is a place to stop where you could kind of see where everything is. If I were to go through and really turn this into an edit, I could have as many edits as the edit needs. I was asked once how many edits in a video by an editor who wasn't super experienced, and it kind of floored me. I guess some people count the edits in a video. I don't. It's just as many as it needs. So don't be afraid to edit as much as you want. These videos will not have B-roll. B-roll is the video that plays over the top of these clips that I've shot here, and usually that means you don't see what's happening on the screen, right? You see whatever is happening with the B-roll, which could be people working with cheese, people eating cheese, Christy teaching her class, talking to people, any number of things. We haven't shot that content yet. I don't know if we're going to shoot that content for these videos. It just may be her talking, or maybe I'll put up some graphics to cover up edits. But that's where you can really hone word by word what is being said, because then you're just working with the audio. You don't have to mess with making that video look good because it's all covered by B-roll. And that is the magic of B-roll. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here, leave the stream at this point, and then if you guys have any questions, reach out, text, send a message, and if I do this again, I'll address those at that point. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream if I can I figure that out? You're just going to watch me messing around with this now. End stream. There we go. All right, bye everybody.